Hey, what is up? Dalton from MSI here with another custom PC project. Last time, me and my buddy Larry, we worked on a custom coffee table build for CES, and today we're back with another one, a little bit smaller. We're gonna be using one of our new Z490 motherboards. So that's Larry, that's the coffee table.
We're utilizing it. This is probably the ergonomically worst thing to do, but designing a PC in your living room on the coffee table PC is kind of cool. So we're gonna use this. So we're in Vectorworks here, and this concept is basically a Hexagon PC that's meant to be wall mounted. And as you can see, each component is isolated in its own hexagon. Each hexagon has its own components. So this one's actually the motherboard. Up here we have the AIO liquid cooler. And over here we'll have the GPU block, and here is the power supply. So what we have here is we actually have a test bench, open air frame. They're basically these very simple tubes, and then they interconnect with each other, kind of like Legos. For the power supply, the only mounting points, unfortunately, are down here. Like, we can't mount to anything else on this. So we have two L brackets here. They're not meant for this whatsoever. They have to be modified. So we have to cut and make sure we put the holes in the exact right places so it actually holds the power supply in place. That way this doesn't fall over, because that would suck. And then for the graphics card, we have a also pretty easy to obtain tray that goes in most cases. And ultimately what we're gonna do is actually we're gonna put it on the inside like this so that it can bolt down against the backboard of the Hexagon. So we're here with James. He actually built the coffee table PC, that massively giant thing. He was the creator behind that and kind of putting that all together. He actually runs Rain Studio. He's going to be building the Hexagon computer itself, the frame, and there's a little bit of thought process behind it. Just want to give you like a quick behind the scenes of what kind of materials we use, and the basis of it is the edges were actually made out of you said Baltic birch plywood?
Yeah, like a multi-ply Baltic birch, where you have uniform sort of grain throughout. And part of the reason I think we chose that is because we knew the edge was going to be exposed, and this is like a furniture grade plywood, as opposed to something like this is maybe more traditional plywood when people think of plywood. Well, the backing is also plywood, and part of that is because I don't know if sometimes you put a screw into MDF and you pull it out or something, you'll end up blowing it out. It's nice when it's perfect, but once you kind of cut into it or start exposing the edges, it can sort of break up.
So for the hexagons, like, how did you actually put it together?
So the hexagons, what I did, is we cut all the angles at 60 degrees, and then the way that it sort of assembled it is I used sort of like a straight edge kind of piece like this, put all the pieces together once they were done, sort of taped up the seams when they're flush this way, and then that way I could flip it over, put glue in the seam, and then close it up. And since they were all cut to the same length and the same angle, and then I would put glue in it and then do that, and then could kind of keep it taped up and then wait for the whole thing to dry, and then could pull the glue off, and then that would be the box before then the back is mounted to it.
The actual main one is actually one solid component, so it's mounted up for just display purposes in terms of how it's going to actually be mounted to the wall. It's mounted on what James calls a French cleat, right? Correct, I guess that's a common term.
So the way the cleat catches, like you said, they're cut at a 45-degree angle, and each piece on the back has one that's cut at a corresponding 45. So once they're mounted to the wall, the cleat can just slides over, catches on, and then once it's catched, it's pretty strong, because it's the shearing force is catching it on the 45-degree angle.
And then the awesome part is with that cleat, it actually, if you look at the back, it actually is just flush with the wall.
Yeah,
so there's like no hardware
flat,
exposed.
exactly.
So this is where we're hiding all the cables. This looks clean now, and then once the cables actually come in, we'll actually have to cable manage it pretty well. Hopefully it'll look really nice, but you won't ever see it anyway.
The Hexagon PC chassis is pretty much ready for us to build it. But before we begin, let's go over the specs of what we're actually using in this PC build.
So for the CPU, we'll be using Intel 10th Gen Core i7 10700K. And we'll be pairing it with MSI's latest MEG Z490 And for our graphics card, we'll be using MSI's GeForce RTX 2080 Ti Gaming X Trio.
For cooling, we're going to be using one of MSI's new AIOs. This is the MAG CORELIQUID 360R. It's a 360mm radiator. For this PC build, we partnered up with Seasonic and Corsair.
From Seasonic, we'll be using their Focus GX850 power supply. And from Corsair, we'll be using their 64 gigs of VENGEANCE RGB PRO RAM, along with 1TB MP600 NVMe M.2 SSD. Alright guys, so let's get started on this build.
That's going to be a wrap on this video. What did you guys think of this custom DIY PC? Was there anything we could have done better? Would you want a wall-mounted PC for your own setup? We'd like to thank Corsair and Seasonic for supporting this project. And if you have any suggestions on what we should try making next, let us know in the comments.